Hey YouTube, and by Spy J here once again, and not just me, however, I've had the rare opportunity to have a guest on my channel, returning for the first time in 4 years, if you can believe that, and that is Superman DC of JC. Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. Had to come back because a new Superman movie released, and I'm a massive Superman fan, so it's an honor to be back on Spy's channel. We've been friends for multiple years now, yeah, it's been a long time, 4 years or something since we last had an interview. So glad to be here and talking about Superman.
Absolutely, and he may or may not be playing nice a little bit by saying friends for multiple years. Well, friends for multiple years, yeah, but we definitely have had our rough patches with me being the owner of Marvel MCU, being the owner of JC. But I'm so glad that when we had that interview, we were able to come together as adults and put it all behind us. And our dynamic has been perfect ever since. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of commonality between being a server owner that only a server owner understands. And so, yeah, I guess rivals to now friends.
And the reason why I was only going to do this review if I could have you on is because you've basically branded the Superman character in Minecraft. That was one of the things that I was asking about when we had the interview with Pulp, is that if you've been a part of the Minecraft superhero community, then you know that some people have the perfect portrayals of those characters. I've never seen a better Superman than you. I've never seen a better Spider-Man than me. So I was essentially like, what if I bring someone known as Superman to do the Superman review? And that's why we're here now.
You're too kind. I don't necessarily know if I was the best portrayal of Superman. I kind of sat on the character for a long time without role playing or anything like that just because I was so busy, but you're too kind to think of me as Minecraft Superman. Um,
I think what helped was the branding of it. Like you not necessarily gameplay wise on the server, a little bit, yeah. However, it was also your personality. I get the humble but powerful vibe from you that Clark Kent has, being from a farm and all, referring to Clark Kent. I don't believe you've actually really grown up on a farm. So,
no, I haven't actually.
and plus, also, like, you usually being the one, I'm sure you portrayed him in some of the JC media, right? Similar to how I've been Spider-Man in the media as well.
Yeah, of course, like in our JC movies and things like that. And like in the early days, I definitely role played a lot more before the server became popular and just didn't have as much time. But I've been a lifelong Superman fan. Like I have photos of me in a Superman costume from when I was 3 years old. And now I'm an adult and I still love Superman. I grew up watching the show Smallville, which came out in 2001, so like 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And yeah, just love it. Just absolutely love Superman.
Plus, hands down best Superman appearance in Minecraft. Your skin, that's a amalgamation of different Superman skins with your own unique twist, is iconic. I've
Yeah,
never seen a better
who
appearance for Minecraft.
knows? I might even have to don the new James Gunn suit. We'll see.
That would be insane. Um, so let's start with the basics. The movie itself, thematically, just as a film, character aside, genre aside, is it a good movie? To that I say yes, of course. It's also got a powerful message in it that's not prominent. I feel like most movies are made now to give the audience member a good time or put them on an adventure. And maybe there's a problem solution and an ultimatum at the end for the main characters. But this is one of those movies where you can actually take away something powerful, adults and children alike, in actually being human.
Yeah, like um to be honest, in watching the trailer, I was a bit skeptical at first. I was not sure about the direction they were going. I thought it looked a bit cheap and a bit like the CW TV shows with the costuming and things, especially like Guy
Hmm.
Gardner and Hawk Girl and some of those characters. But I gotta say, like, I'm happy that I was wrong because I was kind of leaning towards being a hater, and I was like, I'm not even gonna go see it. And then what the what the lead actors like Nicholas Hoult and Rachel Brosnan and David Corenswet did with the marketing is kind of what drew me in to actually see the film. And um, yeah, I ended up really enjoying it. And as a Superman fan, I didn't hate it, so that's a good sign that like it did the right thing and it got the message of Superman correct. I thought that
Yeah.
the film was a little bit too comedy, but like that's to be expected with James Gunn's sort of directing style. Um, but I thought they encapsulated the message of Superman, and I thought the casting was really good, and I loved Krypto, and I loved the spoiler alert Supergirl scene at the end too. I thought that was really fun and cheeky. Yeah,
Yeah, if Superman DC, owner of Minecraft's most popular DC server, doesn't hate it, that's a pretty good sign. Uh, I I want to touch on the style that they went comedy wise. Was that you know I initially thought James Gunn. I thought that was just what he was doing for Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought that was just his way of differentiating Guardians from Avengers. But I know he didn't do the original Suicide Squad film, but then he kind of repeated that with the second one, the Suicide Squad. So now I'm seeing it again a little bit. I mean, not as severe, I don't think, with Superman, and it's like, you know, I I am aware that Superman isn't as serious as, let's say, Batman. So you wouldn't want, the Batman, who is Robert Pattinson. You wouldn't want that movie to have the tone that Superman had. And I even saw that there's like a different color palette for like if you compare like the trailers to like in the initial trailers to what we got for the film, that aligns up more with a comic book palette. And so I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. I'm letting it pass because I think that's a little bit more for Superman. So, however, some areas it works, some areas it goes a little bit too far. I think one area where it worked was the middle fingers in the background for Green Lantern.
yeah,
I thought that
that
was
was funny
hilarious.
as yeah.
Uh, there's this old GIF, this old dot GIF file, GIF or GIF, however you want to pronounce it, of Green Lantern from an old cartoon using the megaphone, but the caption said "Shut the f up." That I used to always use
Yeah,
on the JC forums. So that reminded me of that. Like, it doesn't have to be an always a serious use of his abilities.
I love the
Um,
line that Lois says about his haircut too. I can't remember what it was, but it was funny as.
um, and yeah, so as a film, it was good, and I think it had the perfect level of comedy. And what about as a Superman film? How does this compare to you? Where does it stand against other Superman films?
Well, like traditionally, the kind of movies I'm into, are sort of like the cinematic ones. Like I love the style of Christopher Nolan and The Dark Knight and movies like that. And like to be honest, I really enjoyed Man of Steel and some of the Zack Snyder work. Like I'm not a Zack Snyder lover or hater. And I think Man of Steel as a movie is a good one. But in order to capture like the essence that is Superman, it was a bit dark and like the decisions they made about him like snapping Zod's neck and things isn't necessarily how Superman in the comics would operate. Um, but this new James Gunn Superman, I think, is probably one of the best comic portrayals of Superman that we've seen on screen, other than maybe the Christopher Reeve Superman, which has just become so iconic and even inspired the comics itself with like even the look of Superman is really based off how Christopher Reeve looked in that movie. Um,
Hmm.
so for that reason alone, I think yeah, it's the best Superman portrayal we've seen on screen. And there's a line that Superman in the movie, the new movie, delivers about how Superman's human and how he wakes up every day and struggles. I love that line because that's a line that I've been trying to like similar to that, trying to explain to people when they say they hate Superman, they can't relate to him, he's just a powerful god. I love that line because I feel like that's the reason people connect to Superman is because he doesn't have to do this. He does this out of pure humanity. And I think that's something that can get lost a bit with the character.
Right. And circling back a little bit, I remember what I want to say about the comedy aspect is that, I feel like we're long overdue for more serious films in in the superhero genre. Um, Superhero films are kind of put off in a sort of dismissed category, and I feel like if more of them were made, absolutely serious, that you could treat at the same level of a movie with high stakes minus superheroes. I
Yeah,
don't
well,
know,
that's
like
kind of
maybe a
what The
Tom.
Dark Knight was, right? Like it
Exactly,
almost felt
exactly.
like a Benkai sort of movie, and that's Christopher Nolan for you. And Man of Steel tried to mimic that. And then building off that, I just don't know if that was the best foundation for the DCEU, because trying to make all those movies dark doesn't apply to all the different characters. Whereas
Exactly.
this new James Gunn universe, it's just the perfect setting to set up the rest of the universe. It's got me excited about what the rest of the universe and the films to come will look like. But I think if this movie failed, it would have been the end of the DCU in terms of movies. Like this was
Right.
the one shot
Horrible,
that
yeah,
James
it was
Gunn
a
had,
horrible start.
and I think he really pulled it off because it's got a lot of people talking and a lot of people excited about the movies to come, like the new Supergirl and some of the other ones that he's got in the making.
Yeah, and the reason why I mentioned that about the comedy aspect is that I feel like the MCU set a bad precedent of inserting comedy into everything, and it
Yeah,
got exhausting at a certain point. But I think if we actually judged it character by character, that's the perfect middle ground. Um, I don't know what their intentions are for Batman. Some people are naturally already assuming that the Batman is going to be a part of that. Um,
I really hope
I
whatever they
haven't.
do, they don't make Batman comedy. Like I think Batman needs that serious tone to make it believable. Um, so I
Right.
don't know if having the same level of comedy in Superman would work for Batman. So I really hope that they treat that a little differently. Um, and maybe they will use Robert Pattinson. I don't know, but from the sounds of things at the moment, I think James Gunn wants to do his own Batman. So we might get a completely different actor. Um, I don't know who would be right for that part. It seems like a very difficult part to play, and you're going to get a lot of people judging you. Um, Robert Pattinson, I'm
And
pretty happy with, to be honest, but
you might get surprised, because I don't think people imagined as Batman, but then we got him and he pulled it off. We could either get some sort of execution where like Robert Pattinson, just not explicitly implied to be from the continuity that his original movie is from, or we could get another Batman that surprises us and pulls it off and has the same essence. But with that movie being so recent, only coming out 3 years ago, it's kind of not the best idea in terms of marketing. That's another thing I want to mention is that the way you market a film is important when considering what kind of film it actually is. I don't want a film being marketed as super serious and then to see comedy that wasn't as portrayed. I got more comedy than I expected out of Superman. Um, and but was did the movie still have the sense that it claimed to have? Yes, just didn't expect all the comedy. Um, and on the topic of the greater universe of DCU, um, let's talk about established, pre-established films versus films that get established, if that makes sense. So basically, I mean how this film kind of gives us the rundown at the very beginning. 3 centuries ago this happened, 30 years ago this happened. Um, uh, three, basically gives you a quick rundown of what's happened as it relates to Superman, and then already having other established characters as well. Um, how do you think that was handled in the movie? Like having Mr. Terrific, um, Green Lantern, and you know, Lex Luthor is kind of a given because it's a Superman film. If he's already established, his antagonist already be established. But basically, with everyone included, um, making it a bit of a team up film as well, while also keep continuing to center it around Superman. How do you think that was handled in the movie?
I think it was good. I think everyone's a bit exhausted by origin stories. Um, and
True.
I'm pretty sure someone asked James Gunn this exact question in an interview that I saw, and he said that like pretty much no one like starts reading comic books from the beginning. It's always like you're always gonna be jumping in at a certain point. By that he means like you're not reading like Action Comics 1 like from the very beginning. Some people
Right.
might, but you're kind of jumping into this whole universe um, at a certain point, and that's your point that you're grappling onto, and that's what makes it feel realistic. Um, because if you're starting from like scratch and Superman's the first ever metahuman to exist, and then suddenly you're throwing in all these different ones, um, it kind of fails in the world building aspect. Like it, I guess it makes the whole thing make more sense by having like we've set the rules of the universe, have it so that there are these individuals that have powers. Whereas if you're just randomly introducing them and having to explain the origin through realism, it's not going to be as realistic. And that's one thing the Snyderverse does a bit wrong is like everything has to be explained as to why it exists rather than it just being a universe where these things exist and they always have. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. That definitely makes sense. The movie that Superman was going for would have been more complicated and would have needed more runtime if they started at an earlier point. Um, so that would have also delayed the message they were trying to deliver. So that's definitely
It's
that's
similar to like
certainly
Tom Holland's Spider-Man. It's like how many movies have we seen about Spider-Man's origins now? Like there was the Amazing Spider-Man and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. It's like people already know the story. Um, and so it's just let's skip that part that people already know and get into the plot of the movie. Because otherwise it's just wasting runtime. And the same with Superman. Like there's been countless actors that have played Superman over the years. Um, the show Smallville with Tom Welling, like basically is 10 seasons of just Superman's origins. It's not exactly comically accurate, but if you're really interested on Superman's origins, you could watch that show to get a bit of backstory. Um,
Mhm.
But yeah, it's great because I think it starts with Superman being 3 years into when he revealed himself to the world, which I think's a really great point that he's still
I've
somewhat
always liked that
naive and
too. Yeah,
yeah, he still doesn't exactly know what
I
he's
like
doing, but he still is established.
I like introducing fresh characters that are still in their beginning, rather than like if you don't want to introduce them from the beginning to their origin, you could still also make them beginners where their origin had just happened not that long ago. And you mentioned Spider-Man, and I want to use an example of that as well. I think the reason why everyone's favorite Spider-Man cartoon, the Spectacular Spider-Man, is it works so well from the one time I've watched it, is that it's pretty much pre-established. You don't really get his origin until a bit later into the season, and there's always something going on in the background. It's an established Spider-Man universe where Tombstone exists, Black Cat, if I'm not mistaken, exists. Everything's kind of going on in the background as well. So it's not just the focal point that's happening. There's a greater world happening around it
Yeah,
as it means to that character. I believe there was a scene in Superman where they were taking care of some kind of interdimensional beast while he's just casually having a conversation with Lois, and Lois like, are you not going out there to help them?" And it's like, "Oh no, they've got that one." I
yeah,
thought it was a holographic show. Like I don't know if you've seen that new giant dome projector ball in Las Vegas.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought it
The
was something like
sphere,
that.
or
It
whatever.
was some kind of yeah, the spear. I thought it was some kind of display like that, imitating the world that they live in. But then because no one was reacting to it, they were just having a conversation while it was happening. You can clearly see it. So I'm like, oh, that must be some kind of projector.
And
Um,
that is like
the
so
creature didn't look
Superman. Like that is such a
Yeah, the creature
Superman comic scene. That.
he didn't look the creature did not look solid mass at all, so I thought, "Oh, maybe it's just some kind of holographic performance." Um, but then they say that he says that it's real, just that he's not getting involved because they've got
Yeah,
it. But I was like, "Oh, so that's real," and he's just not chiming in, and that plays into that greater universe thing. He's not gonna be there for every threat, and that would clear up things like I remember when, um there was a Captain America film that came out right around the time Avengers 2 came out, I believe. Um, might have been Winter Soldier, and people were like, where were some of these other characters then? And it's like, well, it's a great everyone's kind of on their own page, in their own book. Um, so that
yeah.
kind of helps with that.
And I
And were
think,
we dealing with?
as you
Oh, go
said,
ahead.
like with the Spectacular Spider-Man, I think instead of like using the story to create the universe, it's just like a nice niche story within the universe, and so it doesn't have to tell the origin, and that's what makes it so great. It's just a nice, concise. It's like one season, isn't it? I think one season like story within the
Two
Spider-Man
seasons.
universe, and it feels believable because of that. And the same you could say
Right.
about the Superman movie. Like it's the DC universe is real, it's happening, Metropolis is real, and it's just one story of like a week in Superman's life, which has been ongoing for 3 years.
And I think a struggle that past superhero films I've had would be having too many villains. And in this scenario, you have both a handful of villains and a handful of heroes. Do you think at any point there was ever an overwhelming feeling, or like where there was like a bit of an overabundance of characters at any point?
I think it was handled quite well. One thing that I can criticize about the movie is I thought um, Lex's character was a little too comedy. Like Lex is a very calculated and diabolical villain. And that's nothing to do with Nicholas Holt's portrayal. I thought he did an excellent job at playing
Hmm.
Lex, but in the way that he was written, like even the scene where Krypto's like picking him up and swinging him around was very like Avengers Hulk-esque. The way that he was doing that, I thought it kind of
Right.
it made Lex seem like he was this like weird stalker, obsessive with Superman person, which he kinda is if you look at it on paper. But they could have maybe conveyed Lex in a more serious tone. Um, and then like
His thing, Superman was a bit minimalistic. Like we get that. I'll put it this way: like, do you think maybe on his end of things, like we know we've seen Superman's origin enough. Do you think we should have seen a little bit more of where grudge against Superman comes from?
yeah,
I mean, I
that
understand he's
I feel
kind
yeah,
of
as you said, I feel like
go-
it's not that well explained why he hates Superman as much as he does. And that could have made
yeah. So
him
then,
more a better villain.
right,
But I think because Nicholas Holt's betrayal of him was so good, like the actual acting component, he gets away with it. Um, but if they did sort of explain the feud better, and maybe they have, I might have to rewatch it to remember um, why they had a feud in the first place. But I think yeah, if they just treated the character with as a bit more calculating and smart and things like that, it would have made more
the
sense.
simple answer is that he views, and according to James Gunn, according to what the character says in the film, and plus what James Gunn considers the kind of story that Superman is, the film, is that he views Superman as an alien, and is discriminating against him. That's basically the gist of it, and that's from what he says in the film. That's basically all I got, and that's why I say I think it was a bit minimalistic. I think
Yeah,
because clearly he's going after Superman personally. There are countless. There are already quite a few heroes. Why are you targeting him? Um, and I don't think he wasn't the first. He wasn't he was the first modern day metahuman. So it's like, what gives? So that's why I see what you're saying. On paper, he just looks like a stalker, or an obsessive, someone obsessed with Superman. But if they would have made it a little bit more personal than that by elaborating a bit more on what's the deal between him and Superman personally on a personal level, that would have balanced it out a little bit more. But instead, it's just, less, it just seems unhinged and relentless for no exact reason. Besides, he's an alien, and it's basically as far as it goes. I mean, they could have elaborated on that a little bit further, and I don't think that I'm glad that he didn't die because we could still get suit Lex, and they could build on that later. Um, so yeah, any other thoughts on that?
yeah, no, I 100% agree with that, and would love to see Suit Lex. Um, yeah, I think you've basically covered it. That he basically hates him because he's an alien, but that doesn't really give much context as to why he hates him so passionately. But maybe there's something that I missed when I watched it about that. Like, but yeah, they could have elaborated more and gone a bit more into the origins as to what in particular Superman did to him to um, garner that sort of response from Lex.
And before we move on to the next topic, I want to talk about, are there any breakout characters, or I mean, standout characters that you want to highlight? For me personally, and you gotta help me out here. I'm not as big of a DC fan as you. I don't know all their names. It was his name is Element or something like that.
Metamorpher, do you mean?
The guy who spawned Kryptonite out of
Yeah,
his,
Metamorpher.
like, I hate
Yeah.
Metamorpher. Okay.
That
Um,
is a yeah, that's a very different version of the character from the comics, but it was again a very James-esque like comedy play on a bit of um, a secondary funny character with funny powers. So I liked it. Um, and but to answer your question, some of the standout characters for me was honestly like Jimmy Olsen. I thought that was like that guy was perfectly cast. Like he looks like the comic Jimmy Olsen, and I loved how he was like a ladies' man for no reason. I also loved Krypto. I thought that was awesome and very well done. And apparently they CGI'd it based on James Gunn's real dog, which I think's cool. Um, and I loved the small cameo from Supergirl too. I thought that was so funny, and it sets up the character to be kind of interesting. How she's like a party girl, and I think they're gonna play onto that with her being in some sort of depressive state from losing her planet and losing her family, and the movie will be about her overcoming that some way. So that's a bit of a
Yeah,
different
it would affect
origin.
her. It would affect her a little bit more because she was
She was
like I
older,
went
yeah.
through a traumatic event as a baby, but I was a baby when it happened, so I have the memories without the trauma because I was too young to receive it, to receive the stakes. So in Supergirl's case, she can receive everything that happened, and yeah, she's
I
basically
feel, I
older,
feel
and
like that's a realistic like teenage girl response to grief. Is like acting out like that. So yeah,
right.
I think it's gonna be interesting, and I thought it was
Plus, it
funny.
like perfectly explains why Crypto acts the way he acts. Because look at his main influence. That was also a good way to explain that. Because I that might get in the way for some people. It didn't bother me too much. It was normal dog stuff for me. They're not perfect, of course. But for some people, I wouldn't be surprised if they were a little bit annoyed with Crypto. Like, okay, it shouldn't take three commands to follow the command, especially from Superman of all people. Um, but yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
I think
definitely
he
interesting.
took up the
Love to
role
see
of
that.
comic relief in the film. Like he definitely was a character to get a laugh out of the audience.
Mhm.
And that's another thing from the trailer. I was like, seriously, they're doing crypto, and then, but in the essence of the whole film, it did make sense and it did add to it. I don't know if you agree with that.
It did. It did. It helped, for sure. Crypto got, you know, a good chunk of that. Maybe they should have maybe they should have used crypto, in my opinion, to let that be where the main source of comedy comes from, and instead of dispersing it throughout the whole film. Um, and what are your thoughts on the clone? That's who I want to talk about, the clone.
Oh, well, as a DC fan, like I knew straight away that Ultraman was going to be a clone of Clark. So, um, didn't hate it, but again, like maybe it was an unnecessary extra villain that they didn't need. But with Superman, because he's so powerful, you do kind of need someone that has his strength level to have a convincing fight scene. So that could have been the logic behind having Ultraman. So I didn't hate it, but yeah, it did feel a bit like there was too many villains. I really didn't like the engineer. I thought there was kind of like a random villain to have in there, and wasn't something that I thought was like, oh damn, this is cool or anything like that. I just thought it was just another goon that Superman would have to take out. But it was kind of cool how they did the scene with the nanites filling his lungs and things like that.
One thing that has me not the biggest Superman fan, and I don't hate the character by any means, but there's no perfect hero. But the thing with Superman is that for his concept of a Superman, he does take lots of L's, and we definitely see that in this film. Um, and it's like he nearly loses quite a bit for someone. But at the beginning, the film kicks off with him having his first loss for the first time. And with the first one with Lex and what's it? You gotta help me again. Who did he fight in the beginning when the movie first
Superman.
started? Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Who does Superman fight in the very beginning when he first?
was it Hammerhand or you mean the
Yeah,
robot that
something like
Lex was controlling?
yeah, yeah. And I think he comes in. He goes through the portal and returns to Luthor Corp.
Yeah, I think it was Hammerhand, which I think was supposed to be John Henry Irons, um, who is like Steel Superman. Like that's what that was
Yeah.
supposed to be, but it was a bit of a unique character. I could be wrong here. From DC experts might know better than me, but that's what I thought it was supposed to be. And again, that was
Hmm.
another just like minor threat for Superman to face in the beginning. That wasn't the overarching villain. That was in the end Lex Luthor.
Um, and his his tendencies to lose throughout the film, or I mean, nearly lose throughout the film, a lot makes sense. Um, you have that beginning battle, and then you have one character that has a size advantage because they become oversized. Then I like the way that he handles some of these instances where they did also a great job of differentiating Superman from the other characters. He wanted to preserve one of the villains to experiment to do some tests, um, and study it. But then the others, were fighting a bit more cruelly, which I don't knock them for that. But it definitely shows you who Superman is versus who someone like Hawk Girl is.
Yeah,
And the I like the way Superman ultimately wound up winning to his clone because he definitely wasn't going to win on strength alone. He definitely wasn't going to overpower him. So going the additional help with Crypto route and seeing the black hole, that was sufficient for me. I don't know if a mere strand of Superman's hair was enough. Should have been enough because that sounds a little bit too easy. I mean, and maybe the process was more complicated than that. Who knows? But I felt like the way in which he got a perfect clone just from a strand of hair felt a little bit too easy. Like it shouldn't be that easy. Like it shouldn't be all you need.
yeah.
It's Superman.
I think that's a bit
Maybe,
of a
maybe
comic
that's the
thing
only guy you
too.
need is good hair.
um,
Yeah.
well, like over the like what is it like 80 years of comics, there's been like very simple villain plots, such as like yeah, they find a
Hmm.
strand of Superman's hair and they make a fully powerful Superman clone, like that sort of thing, which doesn't exactly make sense, but it's not exactly out of the ordinary in the DC universe, so it does work. I do think they did make Superman in this movie a bit of a punching bag, but the comics often does that as well. Hence why they made the plot device of kryptonite, which they can always like throw in there to make things interesting and make Superman powerless. And of course they use that. Um, and Superman was a bit of the butt of the joke as well because he was a bit more of like a simple, seen as brawn rather than intelligent in this universe. Um, but I think it still played off well and it worked in the context of the movie.
Other standout characters, like I mentioned, would be his parents. A
Yeah,
great example of you know how significant your influences are in life. Superman might not know his original parents, but I'm sure he still learned that people look up to their parents and see that as their sort of main source of inspiration, who they become. So him having to come to terms with that, but then redefine who his parents are by having the clip play at the end of finding his parents soothing, but then that being his parents rather than his blood parents, that was a really big message. Kind of reminds me of the Yondu and Peter Quill thing, where Yondu says, "Ego was your father, but he wasn't your daddy."
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's actually I didn't think of that. That
so
is a good parallel. Um,
yeah,
yeah, and there's a line that Jonathan Kent says to Clark in the movie where he's like, "We don't get to choose who our children are. We just give them the tools to become who they want to be," or something like that. Um,
mhm.
I thought it was really interesting that they made Jarell and Lara like semi-evil. Like they had only the first part of the message, which was nice about him saving people, and then the second part was about him like taking many wives and brides or something like that. I can't exactly remember what it was, but it was definitely
Yeah,
questionable. That is not something that's
yeah,
typically in
definitely.
Superman's origins, but um, I think it was slightly inspired by James Gunn's own backstory because um, he had a bit of controversy where he said some tweets and then got fired
Hmm.
from Guardians 3 and then got reinstated after a petition with some of the actors and some of the fans, and they
Hmm.
brought him back. And that's why in the film they had that, like, it was sort of like Superman being cancelled. And then when he went through the rift, they had all the monkeys on the keyboards typing like
Right.
hateful things on the internet. And so I thought it was kind of like an allegory for James Gunn's life and some of the things he went through, maybe inspired the character. I also thought it was interesting that Jarrell spoke in a different language, but again, I guess that actually makes sense. Um, it was a bit interesting how they were like, "Oh, our top linguistics determined that this video is accurate and this language." It's like, how would someone from Earth, expert in linguistics, know like the Krypton language? It's a bit weird, but again, we just accept it because these are superhero movies and
Yeah,
it's not a serious plot.
and I love that you brought that up. That's largely possible that that's what that is, and that it's taken inspiration after what James Gunn went through. And it also one thing I noticed is that, and one thing that this film gets right is that they definitely know they definitely realize that when something bad happens, when someone good looks bad, we forget the good. We make the bad the new center of them. Um, and that's what those monkey bots were doing, and that's what everyone was doing, like seeing Superman in a negative light. And then Lex says, well, he was grooming them. That's his agenda to say that, but um, people overlook who Superman has been. Like, what does his background look like? And like and even in real world, we just don't think, was it really all for nothing? Does it really all mean nothing now? Um, are you going to let this bad incident define who they are today and who they've been for the past however long this person has been? Um, and then, which transitions perfectly into the message, Superman is metaphorically human. He's human,
That's
subject to
right.
the
And
same
that's the
mistake.
whole message of the film. Like, even Superman
Hmm.
isn't this perfect character without flaws. Like, um, he overcomes the need for validation from other people or his parents, and then in the end, where they have that awesome music scene, he's just happy with the people in his circle and the parents that he has on Earth, which I think is a powerful message that like you're not destined to be who people think you're going to be. You can make your own path, and like just your your mistakes and your actions don't necessarily define you.
Plus, important level of priority that needs to go on how you view yourself and where your heart lies and knowing what your intentions are as opposed to others and the greater world around you, because ultimately those are just other people. um they're at the center of their own universe, and plus in some cases some of them are just monkey bots. And
Exactly.
their opinions. um Any other final thoughts, and what would you like to see? Any other thoughts about the film, and what would you like to see going forward in Superman's arc in DCU and the greater DCU? What would you like to see going forward? What's your next steps look like for Superman and the universe as a whole?
Um, so I thought they did a really good job considering what was at stake because this was really
True.
the one last shot of getting a DC film right, like a world building DC film right that was going to define like the next year's worth of DC movies. Um,
Hmm.
so it was almost an impossible task, and it's going to, no matter what, it's going to. Some people are going to love it, some people aren't going to love it, some people might even hate it. Um, but I think it pulled off a DC film in its own right, using kind of the Marvel format, but then establishing enough interest that it can kind of garner the next 10 years worth of DC films. So for that, I thought the film was excellent. There, as a Superman fan, there are some things that I didn't exactly like, mainly to do with like how they made Lex unserious and they made Superman a bit of a punching bag and that sort of thing. But again, that is kind of how the comic goes a lot of the time too. So um, you can't make a perfect Superman movie unless we're talking like Christopher Reeve, and even still, that like him flying up and turning back time by spinning around the world's a bit questionable too. But it's just become part of pop culture and people love it. And Christopher Reeve himself is just larger than life, absolute legend. I loved how they put his son as a reporter in the film too. That's another thing that I absolutely loved. Um, but yeah, I think James Gunn honestly has pulled off the impossible, and it's made me excited again for DC and the films that are coming. And like, I'm really excited for the new Supergirl coming out, and I don't exactly know the lineup of the next movies. I think they're doing a Green Lantern movie, which will have like Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner, maybe even Hal Jordan. Um, and yeah, if they're doing Batman, I'm really excited to see if they will use Robert Pattinson or if they're gonna go a completely different actor. In my mind, I feel like they have to go a different actor to make things make sense. Um, so it'll be interesting to see who they choose to portray Batman. But it'll be cool to see Superman and Batman on the screen together. So overall, I'm pretty hopeful with DC movies moving forward. I think James Gunn is the right man for the job in terms of coordinating all these different films the same way that Kevin Feige has with Marvel. So I guess we just wait and see.
Yeah. My final thoughts and what I'd like to see going forward. I would just like to see. Well, let me start here. James Gunn is the man for the job. He just needs to not make them all James Gunn films. I don't want it to be extremely apparent that he made the film.
Yeah, I agree with that. And
Because
I don't know, is he going to
well, it's not
direct
going to
all of
work.
them? I don't know if he's directing Batman or what he's doing. Like, I don't exactly know.
He's not going to. He's basically the Kevin Feige route, like you mentioned. He's not gonna be fully immersed in this in the sand with every single one, but he is going to be the uh the top man for each one. How personal he's able to get with each one and how spread thin he's gonna be to not be that personal, kind of like what happened with Kevin Feige and all the mostly failed Disney Plus shows with MCU. Um, you know, uh, kind of like that. He's gonna be leading the full great charge, from my understanding. Um, but as far as his direct role with each one, it might vary a little bit. Might defer between projects, depending in general. Um,
Well,
but
that'd be
could very
cool.
well.
Be cool if he just
You
like
might see his name everywhere.
if he just directs this one to set up the universe and like he obviously poured his heart and soul into it. Like it's a bit of a love letter to his own life, I believe, this film. So maybe he took the reins on this first one, and then he's gonna step back a bit, employ other directors, and just have like oversight and approve things for the story. If that's the case, I'm hopeful. But I agree with you. If he's making everything like a Guardians of the Galaxy James Gunn sort of film, it might get old very fast.
Very
Um,
fast because
yeah,
we've already seen it with previous films that he's done. Suicide Squad, Guardians. It's it's time to shake things up a bit and let like you hinted at other directors come in and do their tone, and hire them based on who they're being assigned, based on their resume. Um, and I I really hope that the tone of this film was just a Superman thing and won't be a like definitely not don't do a Batman thing for don't do this
Yeah.
tone for Bat. I don't think he would because Batman it's kind of obvious you don't need to do that for Batman or you shouldn't do it for Batman. Um, but in general, don't do it. But in general, don't overuse this kind of comedic tone. I don't think he would for Batman because that's too obvious that he wouldn't do that. However, I think in general he should be very particular about where what the decision making process is with each film, in terms of comedic tone and how far he goes with it.
Comedy's
Um,
honestly like the hardest genre to pull off because if you go too far, then it's too much. Like if you look at
like
say
it's extremely subjective.
yeah, if you look at like Thor Ragnarok, like I feel like that was perfect amount of comedy, and then
Yeah,
Thor Love and Thunder went a bit too far that
horrible.
it wasn't as well executed, and
One of the
people
only films in the MCU that I have not rewatched.
yeah yeah it kind of went too far and it went a bit like unrealistic, and then because it was so
I
comedy,
say I
the
say
plot no one
that
cared about
they
the
they should
plot.
have killed Korg.
Yeah.
They should have killed.
Well, like it just makes like say there's a villain in the film, like it's not a big threat if it's just a comedy movie. Like it means like if
Hmm.
Superman, for example, is struggling or something, but it's just all a big joke, then you don't feel serious about it.
Yeah.
Um, but this movie like played the lines of that very well in a way that it executed it. I would have maybe liked kind of like a middle ground between Man of Steel being on the one side of like very dark and this, like maybe a movie that was in the middle of this
Yeah.
level of comedy would have been nice. But that being said, I still think it pulled off and set the tone for the DCU,
Right.
because there's
And I
more
think I
characters that
think
just
what would
yeah
help.
yeah
I think what would help, um, for someone like me who's not uh, a DC or super immersed with DC, um, and that's why I don't have any particular character expectations going forward. I think what would help is instilling a message into them, and making them powerful movies that can stand on their own rather than just being a stepping stone for something greater. Make them standalone films that happen to build a universe in the meantime. I think a Supergirl film would be nice. I think um, Batman may have to be a different actor, but for different reasons. It's the same reason why they can't quite do a Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire, um, because right now Tom Holland is the one that's mainly being marketed, and he's also on 4 that's coming out. So it's like, a lot that goes in. Like, it's not just about what they'd like to do, what they want to see. If it makes sense ultimately for them to do it. Um, it's not like Spider Verse where it's a completely different medium, um, and won't be hard to distinguish. Whereas Batman with Robert Pattinson having a sequel on the way could kind of make that a bit confusing in terms of marketing and general public understanding. So maybe best case scenario they can do some kind of variant, but not the same exact continuity. Um, kind of like what they're doing with Peacemaker being in the film. I'm not sure that's the same exact one. But there was kind of a difference in continuity between seasons 1 and 2 of that show. Um, so I guess really I'm 50-50 on it. I don't know what the best route to go is with that. And if I've seen the Batman film more, then I'd understand if there's for a particular reason that they can't use that iteration. But Batman is necessary for a DC universe. I think
absolutely
that's just
yeah
um, So I guess we'll see what they come up with. But I think he's on. I think we're definitely on a good track, and that's the important thing. So I'm definitely gonna be tuning in from here on out. There's a trend of us hearing about, like last minute reshoots, um, trying to learn, get ahead of the narrative of the film, and bash the movie for that. And there's a trend of basically finding reasons to be disappointed in the movie before it comes out, and I'm not gonna do that. Um, I'm happy to say I like the film, and I'm happy to say what I thought could have been better. But I'm here to be hopeful and optimistic, and I'm glad the film gave me a reason to be that way about it. Um, and I'm excited for the future because of that.
Me too.
So thank you all for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and stay tuned. A lot more to come. And see you guys all again next time. Bye.
Thank you.